Right. Morena, everybody. We'll make a start. I would like to open today's meeting with a karakia from Councillor O'Brien, please.
Morena tātou, kia nui tātou, ka tohi e te tohi anuku, ka tohi e te tohi arangi, I tupu I hoko ngā pū, ngā wau, ngā more, ngā pūkena, ngā wānanga, ngā tauira. Tēnei te kimi noa te rapu noa I te take, tā huru no ngā arangi tūhaha. Whakaia kia ri te uhi, wero, taumai te mauri, haumi e, hui e, taiki. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Right, so just our meeting notices. So welcome to our first Finance and Performance meeting for the year. Welcome councillors, staff and members of the public. Council and Standing Committee meetings are live streamed on the Council's website and YouTube. Public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to being broadcast. Further information about live streaming protocols can be found on the Council's website. In health and safety, in case of an emergency, follow the building wardens to the nearest exit. The meeting point is across the road here at Peace Park, and the bathroom facilities are located opposite the Chambers foyer entrance. Apologies, we've got Councillor Boynton and the Deputy Mayor Mick, both who are attending the Local Government New Zealand Combined Sector meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those apologies? Councillor Puller moves, Councillor O'Brien seconds. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Against. Carried. Thank you. Do we have any acknowledgements or tributes for today's meeting? No, we'll move on. Do we have any conflicts of interest? No. Right, we will move on then. We've now got our public forum and we would like to welcome Bronwyn Donaldson. The floor is yours. We've given you 10 minutes and then we'll have questions after that. Thank you, Bronwyn.
Oh, right. I'll turn this on. Sorry for you people, but I'll have to push this. This way for the council lose to see. Okay. Madam Chair, Worship, Councillors. In good faith, I emailed the councillors on the 16th of February some of my supporting documents for you to peruse before this meeting. At my last meeting with the Mayor on the 11th of September 2023, the councillors committed to transparency and open communication moving forward wherever possible. 15 months after that meeting, in my opinion, I have not seen any transparency or open communication re the issues I have raised with Council for over 10 years. I first dealt with Carolyn Campbell, Plowner, re the proposed retaining wall in April 2014. Her email states, "You may not agree re the wall at all." The building and compliance management have continually gone against their own planning staff in respect of the Building Act and the protection from falling due to the height of the retaining wall, and in respect of the water being discharged onto neighbouring properties. I now find myself having water from 376 Ocean Road discharging onto my property. I now have vehicles going up and down a non-load bearing retaining wall with no fall protection. These vehicles are literally inches away from me. My note 5 that I sent, councillors' own lawyers, Brookfields, have quoted the Building Act. A fall protection fence is required for structures that involve potential of fall for over a metre. My note 4 is an engineered design drawing for the retaining wall for Seascape Development, dated 21st of January 2014. This document forms part of the conditions of the resource consent for the subdivision. Council will note that the same legal requirements are noted. Fall protection required for a wall over 1 metre in height. For the building department to give the subdivision a code of compliance was unlawful. It is not up to the building management to pick and choose which New Zealand-wide law they wish to enforce and on which landowners. The government has decided fall protection is required for the likelihood of an accidental fall. The government requires a barrier where people could fall 1 metre or more. The barrier has to be continuous in length of the hazard, have the appropriate rigidity, strength and height. These are mandatory provisions for all new buildings and must be complied with. The other objective of fall protection is to stop other property, people from damage. These laws are in place so people do not have to go through the emotional and financial stress I'm going through at the moment. I've had to draw this, otherwise I'd run out of my 10 minutes. So what they did at the subdivision, they built a retaining wall here. They did not build the fall protection as required by the government. Okay, we then get on, and as per the note that I sent, the engineer said that from the 2 metres from the top of this wall, you can't build or travel. So that's 2 metres, and the house is literally starts there. Okay, so then we move on. We also, in the resource consent, we had, I can show you, water used to fall over this, so they put in a swale and that. But I want to, in my 10 minutes I've only got, concentrate on this is an engineered wall. It has been designed by a chartered engineer, and this is those stipulations. And the government says you've got to put this up. Never happened. Lots of communication. Anyhow, so I can measure that. The building and compliance manager, David Bewley, had 2 choices re the development. As a tertiary authority, he must require the developer to reduce the height to 1 metre, and then he can put the fall protection on there. The 1 metre and the retaining wall of 1 metre and the fall protection equals 2. That also complies with your district plan. Or he must require the developer to apply for the resource consent, because the structure, once it's made compliant, is 2.5, which is over your district plan. Okay, your district plan is 2 metres. The building and compliance manager chose to do neither. We would not be here today if the council had treated the landowners the same. As some members of this committee will remember the cost to council, as I also erected a 1.5 metre retaining wall against me and 372 Ocean Road. For that structure to comply, I had a building permit, but for that structure to comply for a code of compliance, I had to put a 1 metre fall protection. I received the code of compliance. I was then threatened by council with legal action, abatement notices, etc. Once the council was informed by Russell McVeigh that they'd interpreted their district scheme incorrectly, but that's another story in only 10 minutes. 10 years from my first contact with council, council as a territorial authority has still chosen not to comply with the Building Act. The council has chosen to not enforce the law in regards to the subdivision developer. Then the compliance officer gave the code of compliance to the new house, even though 2 metres from the retaining wall is a new house. And that new house, before it got its code of compliance, had to have had that fall protection put in. If council had enforced the Building Act in regards to the fall protection, we would not be here today. The retaining wall fall protection would have met the building standards, and the swale and soak-hole for the stormwater would have functioned as designed and detailed in the resource consent and noted on the land title. Fast forward to 2020. 3 and the owner of 376 has completed a 1.4 unengineered retaining wall on the boundary of the property. Here's my boundary. I now have another wall up here, 1.5. Once again state, the Building Act, they must comply. An unengineered retaining wall therefore requires fall protection. Doesn't have it. Whilst the unengineered retaining wall is under the 2 metres of the district scheme, it does not meet the requirements of the Building Act. The unengineered retaining wall is 1.4, fall protection of metre equals 2.4, therefore it requires resource consent. I am clearly an affected party and something must be notified. This unengineered retaining wall is now bulging, coming out, onto our property, endangering life and property. As communicated to Council, I have visited the engineer who worked on the consented retaining wall. He raised concerns as to the unengineered when he googled this wall. And look, the unengineered wall has to be held up by some way. If it's been held up by footings, it has compromised this wall as per his calculations. If it is held up by attachments to this wall was also not designed to be constructed. The other thing he said, it's also not been designed to have water going over it or held in there. We have a 2 metre high, I measured the vehicles, 2 metre high vehicle on a small 2 metre strip. Think of vehicles 1.7. So we've got about this much either side. Will the council's insurance policy cover the liabilities for loss of damage of life to property when the council ignore this law? There's no reason this vehicle cannot come over onto my property. There's nothing. As we now have vehicles travelling along the unprotected retaining wall, both my family, friends are in danger. This matter has become urgent. I expect the council to enforce as a territorial authority forthwith. Council also urgently needs to require the owner of 376 Ocean Road to reinstate the swale and soak-holes to stop its water discharging onto my property. The discharge of water at 376 was such a concern, it was noted on the resource consent and the Lot 1's titles. Councils have a duty to make sure council officers comply and enforce the law. Do any of the councils have any questions on the stuff I sent you on the 16th of February? I wait a reply from this meeting within the next 2 weeks. And what steps have been taken to safeguard my property and the people on my property? The tone of the email I received from the third CEO redealing with the unlawful thing. Quote, "The activities carried out on your neighbour's property are their own business, unless that activity is in breach of a bylaw, regulation, plan or other governing rule in place." So I say to you, it is. It is my property, it is my concern. I have vehicles travelling along an unengineered wall that is not load bearing. I have vehicles travelling along a very small gap, that much either side, between the house and the edge of here. And whilst the garage is, I have no problem that a building was built at the back. It is the access to that building and the only access to that building.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks, Bronwyn. I was just about to interrupt you. That was perfect timing.
I timed myself.
Good, that's well done. Thanks, Bronwyn. Does councillors have any questions that they'd like to put to Bronwyn? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you for your presentation, Bronwyn. You mentioned just towards the end of your, what you said is that you require them to reinstate the swale and the stormwater drain.
Okay.
Are you saying that there was one there before, but when they built the driveway, they actually got rid of it?
Yep. If you go, yep, I sent you the plot 3.
Yep.
Plot 3. Okay. Okay. How am I going to? So this was the retaining wall
Yep.
as per the resource consent.
Yep.
That's Ocean Road. Sort of, that's me. The land went a bit like that.
Yep.
Okay. So when the regional council were involved, what happened was the water used to come down off the subdivision, over the retaining wall and onto my property.
Yep.
You can flick that round if you want to. So the regional council decided, and it's not minor, or less than minor, that a swale, I never knew what a swale was until I met them, but anyhow, so a swale would come down here. Now the retaining wall finishes, there's a dip in my property.
Yep.
The retaining wall comes down, the swale comes down here, comes across to here, and it goes into a soak hole.
Yep.
Okay? I've got a fence along here. And this land here came like that.
Yep.
Contours went like that.
Yep.
A swale is a
Yep. Understand.
dip.
Yep.
It's
Understand
not
as well.
not a concrete structure. I do note that you have, cross checks on when the garage was going for consent. People have asked, provide explanation of how vehicles will be able to travel to the back of the property to reach the workshop due to open storm water drain.
Yep.
So before it got its building permit,
Yes.
the planners had noted,
Yep.
and it's there for a reason.
Yep.
It's not there to look good or,
And so they filled it in when they made the driveway.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And now I have, so when I went, I am concerned.
Yep.
Hence the reason after 10 years, this is the first time I've been to one of these. I've been to lots of the others.
Yep.
So we are having now, the water has nowhere to go.
Yep.
So it can only come over here. So it can only come down here. And the engineer that designed this wall said it's not designed for that.
So the driveway
Yep.
is level with the top of the engineered retaining wall.
Yes. I haven't put a dumpy on it,
Yep. Yeah, but it looks level. So
but
it just
it's
flows.
not like this. It's like
Yep.
this.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Tinchos, did you have a question next, and then Councillor Isles?
First of all, thanks for coming along. We've received, your emails over time, and I think it's quite helpful to have a chance to hear you and to ask questions. And the photo is also very helpful because it just allows us, I think, to understand a bit more clearly what your concerns are.
So that's an old one, and that's from the
Yeah.
regional council.
It looks like it was before they built, right? Because
Yes,
there's
yeah,
no
there's
house.
a house in there. Yep.
So I understand your concerns are two main issues. One is discharging of water onto your property, and the other one is that there's essentially a driveway at the top of that retaining wall which has no fall protection and is a risk to yourself and your property and any visitors. The new retaining wall that you mentioned, when was that put in?
2023. If you have a look at number 7 of your stuff, it had been before that, and David Bewley has sent me the requirements around maintaining the swale and so-called for the stormwater purposes. The requirements to maintain the swale and stokehold is an ongoing condition of the subdivision consent. This is registered as a consent notice on the certificate of title for this property. The requirements sit with the owner to ensure the conditions of the consent notice are adhered to, and the council can enforce the requirements if it's not adhered to. Now that's from David Bewley a year when it was first thing.
And how big is the gap between that new wall and the engineered wall?
I didn't measure it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay.
But this.
Yeah.
This. So I measured. I'm 1.5. I'm quite tall. My grandkids aren't, but I am. So basically, the driveway is here.
Right, yeah.
The vehicles, if I'm mowing the lawns or getting my lemons or cleaning the boat or whatever, this wall here, if I'm standing here, the next wall is that far away from me. So I can have, I bought my tape, love my tape. Oh, too big. So what you've got is a 2 metre vehicle travelling on I'd need 3.5 metres. Okay, so you get the plot?
Sorry, what is that, 3.5 metres?
So if you've got that's all right, I can get the plot. 2 metres is a vehicle, a top, a 1.5 metre retaining wall.
Oh, that's the height you're talking about.
So
Right.
that far up, on 1.5, 2 metres from me
Yeah,
is the height of a vehicle
Yeah.
that far away from me.
yeah, yeah.
And, okay,
Yeah,
so I can have a motorhome go down the back, I can have the big boat going down the back.
yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Bronwyn, for your presentation. Bronwyn, I wonder with the swale and the issues regards the so-called, where is regional council in all of this?
I've had lots of discussions with regional council and they say it's your concern. And no, I don't. I'll tell you what they said, okay? So I went to regional council several times over this and they said when it was a development, the regional council was involved. And the regional council were the ones that put that note on the resource consent and got the thing on the land title. But they said as soon as the council signed the code of compliance, it was up to the council to do this, not the regional council. It is not. He said it shouldn't be altered, but he said, I have no power to do it. And I've spoken to several of them, and I have spoken to one particular guy who was involved right at the beginning. So if you're telling me that the regional council should be involved, write me an email and I'll take it to them.
Well, I was of the understanding that when it came to urban consents with regards the alteration of the terrain, and you're talking about swales that were there prior to any development, is that correct?
No,
Those swales weren't there.
no, the retaining wall, so originally there was that big piece of land,
Yeah. I recall
okay?
it, yes.
And then council sold it to
Yep.
the developer.
Yep.
The developer wanted the height so everyone can have a view.
Yep. Remember all that.
So he built up next to my property, a retaining wall.
Yep.
So this lot 1 wasn't down here by me, it was up here. So then the regional council, yes, were involved, and yes, they took the photo, and they were very involved, and they specifically were very forceful in getting that drawing, number whatever, that I sent to you, and the note on the title, because it is an ongoing problem, water, rain. And that's what they did, and it's gone.
Right.
Thank you.
I think we've got one final question from Mayor Luca.
Hi, Bronwyn. I'm just looking at the GIS map, and I don't know when.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, never mind. Our mapping system,
Yep.
and it looks to me that 376 is just a grass strip. There's no actual driveway there, is there? Is there a concrete driveway or not? And the structure. I mean, why would they be driving down the side of the house? And is that thing that hangs off the end of the house a sort of a shed or garage or something? There's like an additional. It's hard for me to see it, but.
Okay. I don't know.
So is there a concrete driveway that runs along the wall? I mean, I don't know what age this map has, but it might have preceded anything that.
On the back.
Turn the board round, Bronwyn, it'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
376 me. Retaining wall. I can't, you'll be able to find out the dates of what's this building permit. March 23, this document. This owner here applies for a building to go here. Okay? It is called a garage. A garage. Now, garage, I can show you a photo, has cars in it, motorbikes. You can't come down this side. It's only about that wide. He's got to come down this side to get to the garage. Okay? A driveway, in my opinion, does not mean concrete. It does not. One of your staff said to me it's not a driveway because it doesn't have a road crossing. A driveway is, and I'll show you can send this, it's not a very good photo. This is from your compliance officer who took a photo, and there is clearly tracks down here from vehicles. The only way you can get to this large garage is down here. And that makes it a driveway. Is it?
No, there's no road.
There's no road crossing. But between here and here, he's using it to get access to a large double garage.
Yeah, is the garage part of the, or is it that thing that's sticking off the end? Because it doesn't look very large on my map, but
Well, can I come round and have a look at your map?
I'm okay with it. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just not very clear on.
Our GIS system isn't current enough to show the garage on the back, but...
No, well, that's what I just said
Google Maps is-
before. I mean, I don't know when that was taken, but is that the garage?
No.
Oh,
No.
what is that thing then?
That's,
Go to Google Maps, Victor.
no, that
No,
one
Google
there
Maps is older than this.
is about that big by that long down to that planter, and it has about 3 kayaks in it from the last owner.
Okay, some sort of shed.
So what we're doing is we're talking about a large double garage
Okay,
that
all right.
goes
Okay, so it occupies all of that.
all of that area, and the only area he can drive down is that area here.
Got it.
He cannot drive down
No,
there.
no, got it, yep. No, I just thought that was the garage. Thank you.
Right, so any further questions? Yep.
Yeah, that one, that's the large one. You've got the one.
Oh, thank you. Well, if we don't have any further questions, I'd like to thank Bronwyn for her time to come in and present to us. I have read an email from the Chief Executive that the Council's consenting monitoring officer will be investigating the state of the retaining wall and the stormwater management, so you should be hearing from Council in regards to those two issues.
My concern is now I've got 4 boxes of emails, read the retaining wall for 10 years. I can't keep going on. Okay? You know, this is the council's own kind of one of the bits and pieces they use to get through the building permit process. On every one of these, and there must be about 8 times, somebody has said, how are the vehicles going to get to the back and how are they going to deal with that? And yet it's still got a permit and it's still visually, you cannot help but notice it's got no retaining fall protection. So, as I say, it's urgent and I'd like to be in this space in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you very much. And that was a very thorough forwarding of information to us and presentation. Thank you, Bronwyn.
Madam Chair, is there a possibility we can ask for a face-to-face report with the people in council that are responsible for this to actually hear what they are going to be doing?
But we can forward that to the Chief Executive.
I think that would be really good because obviously there's some concerns being raised here about what legally is allowed to be and what's not allowed to be, and I'd actually like to be able to question the staff member concerned at another meeting and find out what's wrong.
Lainey will forward that to the Chief Executive. Thank you. Right, we will keep moving then. So we're moving now on to the confirmation of minutes, and that is on page 9. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Isles moves, seconded Councillor...
I actually have a question about the minutes, if
Yes,
you
I was
can
just
put
about
that
to
in, thank you.
I was just about to,
Thank
I just
you.
need a seconder for the minutes. Councillor O'Brien, thank you. Now, do we have any questions, any debate on those minutes?
So on page 3 of the minutes, we asked, top of page 3, that sentence action point, we said staff were instructed to provide councillors with the investigation report related to the trench collapse incidents as referenced on section 5.2.1. I haven't seen it. I think I was the one that asked for it. I haven't seen it. So it actually concerns me when we do these things like that and ask for reports back and that, we never seem to see them. It's like it's just gone in the winds of time. Also, if you go down to 7.3 in the minutes on page something or other, can't find it, on page 4, it said staff are to provide the committee with information related to why the national average statistics associated with the decrease in waste sent to landfill has gone down significantly, as referenced on page 95, section 4.2.5. So that was 7 weeks ago too. We haven't seen anything. So at some stage when we ask for reports, we actually need to have them come back to us. I don't know if it's in today's agenda, I didn't see it. I've been having trouble with Stella, so it would be really good if some of these things we ask for could be given to us.
Okay, did you want to, you're welcome to say that, yeah.
I believe the amount of waste sent to landfill was part of the report that went to the Environment, Energy and Resilience Committee, but let me get back to you because it also appears in the quarterly reporting for today, but it's a fairly minor one. The amount of waste sent to landfill, if that's what you're referring to, that did appear in the Energy, Environment and Resilience Committee reporting, but I think it's also a small part of the quarterly reporting today. So if we get to that today, we'll make sure that it covers off your comment, and if not, I'll take it back to the team and make sure we get to the specifics. Thank you.
I do want to see that trench collapse report, though,
Yep.
thank you.
Noted, thank you.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, that's an oversight on my behalf. It is ready. I just haven't sent it to you, councillors, so I'll get it to you urgently.
Right, I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, this is just to receive the minutes. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to our very first report on page 10. It is the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Reports. Emlyn, did you want to run us through that report or take it as read?
I'll take the report as read.
Welcome, Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, you go. I will take the report as read. There's a little bit of background around the health and safety situation in the organisation, and I thought you might be interested in some of the documentation around the health, safety and wellbeing strategy we provided you for information at the back. We're happy to take any questions on the report, or if you've got any questions on the scope of the strategy and the strategy itself.
Thank you. Right.
Actually, sorry, on that strategy, I just wanted to stress that we've talked about this previously around the work that we've done over the last 3 months in the health and safety space, was largely around compliance and understanding our obligations under the Health and Safety at Work Act. So you'll see that the strategy contains 10 focus areas with a priority on number 1, roles, responsibilities around governance. Number 2, I believe, is risk management. And number 3 is contractor management. And as I've stated previously, that is where the organisation is carrying an awful lot of its risk.
Thank you. So I'll take questions on the report first, and then I will do Appendix 1, which is the brief, and then Appendix 2, the health and safety strategy. So are there any questions on the actual report itself? No. I've got a question forwarded to me from Councillor Imick, and she's just wondering about whether cyber security training should be included. While it is about health and safety, it is... she's saying that if a cyber attack were to occur, there would be massive stress for council systems and staff who allowed any breach by not doing the training. So it's coming from a stress side.
Yeah, so stress isn't really covered at the Health and Safety at Work Act legislation. However, the cybersecurity is, there is a target in the enterprise risk report. And I am currently preparing a paper, or Brian Elliott, the manager of digital services, is working on a piece around making cybersecurity training mandatory for staff. And we're hoping to roll that out over the next quarter.
And also, she just mentions about the emergency training, and we don't usually seem to have the full complement of staff trained in emergency.
That will be in the organisation performance report that's coming up after this one. Both of those trainings should be in there.
That's okay, no problem. We will pop it in the right place then. Right. No questions on the report. We will move on to Appendix 1, which is the project, it's actually Appendix A, sorry, the project brief. So it starts pretty much on page 13. Did anybody have any questions on that project brief? No, we'll move on then to the Appendix B, which is the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Strategy. Does anybody have any questions on the strategy? I'd like to say well done to the staff. It's great to see it in place. It's been a lot of work. Myself and the Deputy Mayor have had the opportunity to have input into this already, so thank you for that. So does the councillors or Mayor, Councillor Rangiaho?
Morena Em, thank you for the report. Thanks for the report. In terms of priority 7 in participation and engagement, I appreciate the report in terms of Matarana Māori, Te Māori inside of that, but Whakatane District Council, our staff are very diverse in terms of culture. So how are the employees at Wellbeing program evaluated for effectiveness against, because there may be cultural barriers and sort of that, what we perceive as tikana kawa ki te ao Māori may be different to our other staff within council. How is that managed?
Firstly, I'd just like to point out that the strategy, as Emlyn said, has got 9 or 10 priority areas. We're absolutely focused on the first 3 priority areas initially. So the piece around worker participation and engagement and wellbeing will be lower down the priority list, and that is simply because we're focusing on our areas where there's risk of harm.
I can have a follow for, priority 2? Mm-hmm. Okay. So how often are our HSW policies and procedures reviewed to ensure compliance and effectiveness?
That another piece of the project work is to, first of all, implement quite a few policies that are either very much outdated or need to be implemented. As part of that, there will be a rigorous review process put in place to ensure that once those policies are there, they are reviewed regularly and made sure they're accurate and up to date.
Ka pai.
Thank you. If I've got no further questions, I will ask for a mover. The recommendation is to receive the report on page 10.
Sorry,
question?
Just a question before we finish. Thanks for this work. I think it's great piece of work. It's quite high level as a strategy, of course. So my question is really about what are the next steps to that is to be followed in terms of taking the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. It is high level and it is designed to be a guiding document for the organisation to kind of pave our way forward. Underneath this sits a program of work which is in the process of being turned into a project plan. There are hundreds of line items underneath that. The approach that we'll be taking is to look at those key priority areas to develop the high-level frameworks and policies that are required to engage with our staff to roll those policies out, and then it'll be kind of move on to the next thing. So we're really focused on taking a very methodical approach. In the past, there have been times where we've just reacted to things that have happened and put various policies or procedures in place, but haven't rolled them out across the organisation very well. So we are really focused on making sure we work through it methodically, but there is a significant amount of detail that sits underneath this strategy. The strategy itself with the objectives and the KPIs over time what we'll be reporting on to this committee. So those targets are, as we get the reporting mechanisms in place, will be the types of things that you'll see coming through in this report in future.
I think it's great to kind of, it seems there's a bit of a kind of back to basics approach, like revisiting, and I think that's helpful. You know, as you know, I've been kind of interested in the urine testing, but largely because it's a bit of a litmus test because it's a compliance approach. We get something in, we tick it off, as opposed to what I'd understood we were trying to do as an organisation, which was take a more kind of culture approach, I suppose, to health and safety. So I think it's really good, the approach. In terms of how we as a council connect to as this is developed, so you've talked about there'll be some new reporting coming through. With the kind of action plans and programs that have been put in place, how do we connect with what's going on so that we're familiar with and as governors can kind of assure ourselves that the right things are in place?
So there is a line of work around governance. So essentially skilling you so you're asking the right questions from a governance point of view. Is it a bit unusual in health and safety because even though you're governors of the organisation, you're specifically noted in the legislation that you're not liable. The exec team are officers in terms of the Health and Safety Work Act. But there is a piece of work around your role in governance of health and safety, things like due diligence. So there'll be a series of due diligence visits for you to come along and, again, ask those right questions. A lot of the reporting will be about giving you comfort that the officers are running the business well and in a healthy and safe way.
Okay, yeah. So we'll see what comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you for your report. Great report, lots of green ticks and 100% here and 100% there. Honestly, what part of it isn't working?
So the KP, are you talking about the KPIs?
Well, the whole thing about health and safety and wellbeing.
Yes.
And we're doing this awesome project and that's really good. But just from your overall knowledge of the health and safety in the council, I mean, any good report gives the ticks up and the really good things, and a good report will go the ones that aren't quite working, and the good report will say what's actually not working we still need to work on. So I don't see that part of it. I've lost all my notations on here, so something went wrong with Stella in the new version. So off the top of your head, could you tell me what isn't working properly?
So we brought to you previously an audit that we had carried out. So just for you to know that the strategy itself contains indicators. We're not meeting those indicators currently. That is what we will be measuring ourselves on once the strategy is implemented. So where it says governance charter is implemented, that is probably number one job, is to get that done. So we're not indicating that all these things are happening. What the audit showed us before we prepared the strategy, that we've got pockets of the organisation working really, really well in the health and safety space, but we have pockets that are not working so well. The other thing that we found is a lot of our approach is targeting everyone, but what the audit showed is actually there's about 20% of our business that's around 90% of our risk. You know, big plant, holes, lone working, pipes, hot things, poisonous things. That's where we're carrying all of our risk. So our approach is much more targeted, and that's what the strategy is about. So we haven't really hit first base yet. This strategy is signal to the governors this is the direction we're heading.
I'm a great believer in health and safety, so I'm all for what you're doing and your project, but it's just good to hear the balance to it, so thank you.
Right, any further final questions? No? We'll move to the recommendation on page 10. Do I have a mover for the recommendation to be received, the report? Thank you, Councillor Poller. Seconded, Councillor Tantros. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to our all performance report on page 34. And we welcome staff. A few staff? No, those ones are going high. We've got Georgia and Sarah. Welcome, Georgia and Sarah. Now, would you like to run us through the report?
Thank you, Morena koutou. So the purpose of this report is to bring to the Finance and Performance Committee the organisation performance report for quarter 2. So this is for the period October to December 2024. The report covers 4 areas: service performance, financial performance, organisational health and organisational preparedness, as well as provide an update on the business plan. We take the report as read, but Georgia will take you through a few key highlights from the report.
Lovely, thank you.
Cool. So there's no significant changes across the organisation from Q1 to Q2. Things to note from the report is that the staff turnover is low, and we've had a continuance to build cultural competency. The requests for service were higher this quarter across all the top 8 categories. The satisfaction for services has declined against the previous quarter. And I just want to correct an error in the appendix on page 39 of the agenda, which states above. It should state below. The cybersecurity training has also increased well, and councillors will be included in future trainings. The EOC remains the same, slightly below target, and the business plan is on track with only 8% behind. I now hand it back to the Chair for discussion.
Thank you. And we'll just take the report and the appendices for questions. So, Mayor Luca.
Page 41 of the agenda, which is page 5 of the report. The number of staff accessing employee assistance programs, can you just elaborate on that? What sort of assistance do we provide?
So that's counselling services for staff.
Counselling services, okay. All right. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions on the report or appendix? So, Councillor Hales.
Thank you, Chair. Page 44, the RFSs, I see the number or the response is pretty high. Why would it not really be 100%? I read the notation there about the internal and some are forward to external, but at the end of the day, will we not get a 100% response for those RFSs?
I'll let Cass take this one. Thank you, Cass.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So with the RFS report, it's a snapshot of time. So when I build the report, I take the report and it includes RFSs that have been logged and are still being worked on. So it could have, the RFS itself, so request for service from the customer, could have come in yesterday. So it's a snapshot in time. So they would still be working on that itself. So when it says received but not completed, the RFS has been received into the system, but it hasn't been completed the task itself yet.
Okay. Okay, all right.
You look.
I put it in RFS myself, and I don't think I ever got a response. So in that case, what am I supposed to do?
You could definitely contact us. So there is an option to ask for a response. If you didn't ask, then you probably won't get it. But if you would like a follow-up, you can just call or email, and we will respond with where the status is of that job.
Info@whakatane?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from councillors? No? I've got one from, just a comment from Councillor Imick, and I'll put it in the right place this time. It's on page 48. So just wondering when new staff are inducted, are they advised that their role will involve participation? This is an emergency training, will involve participation, or is it totally voluntary? Perhaps a booklet or some video sound bites could be done by staff who have participated in disasters, and how much they learn from them could be done. So just something to encourage staff to do that training.
I can respond to that. So we have recently been ensuring that all of our interview scripts for applicants for roles at council do include a discussion around the expectation that new hires will actually join the EOC in some form. And then we're ensuring as well with the emergency management team that induction is compulsory, so any new hires that do enter the organisation. But thank you for Councillor Mink's comments.
Deputy Mayor Mink, sorry, my apologies. Right, no other final questions? No. The recommendation is on page 34 that the report be received. Councillor Isles, seconded Mayor Luca. Any debate or discussion? No. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, staff. Right, we're on to page 57 with the non-financial performance measures. And Ayla, welcome. Would you like to run us through the report?
Thank you. I'll run us through the report. So this report is for tracking against the 40 long-term plan non-financial measures for quarter 2. The cover report focuses on the measures that are not met or at risk of not being met. So in summary, 33 are on track to be achieved, 5 are at risk, and those are relating to transport and roading requests, and also user satisfaction and statutory timeframes with the resource consent process. 2 are known to have not met the year-end target, and these are Part 4 and Part 5 of the drinking water standards. And we've also got here our data owners in the room who can assist with questions. So we'll pass back to yourself, the Chair.
Thank you. And welcome Nigel and Jim. Well, I'll just take questions on the report and appendices 1 and 2, so please just specify the page that your question is coming from for staff and everyone. Right, any questions? Mayor Luca.
My question relates to the drinking water standards. Looking at Appendix 2, because it refers to this Rule B or whatever it is. I think I've asked this before, but instances of low UV, why would that be? I mean, it's a UV lamp, right? That's got a pipe that goes in and a pipe that goes out. So what is the lamp turning off, or is the wall of the lamp getting dirty, or what's going on there?
The problem is in our SCADA recording, in all instances here, the monitoring system receives a report from the UV unit in the property, and if there's a glitch with the SCADA, you won't get a reading for the time period, and we have to report those automatically to the Water Authority, and as soon as they see a gap, they say it's non-conformant.
Right, so that's a problem with the monitoring, the feedback to the system. So it doesn't mean that there was no UV, it just means you weren't able to measure it.
That's correct.
Because of the measurement system. And can that be fixed? Because then it sort of looks bad, but it's not actually bad.
Yes, it is. It's getting fixed.
Okay.
That particular one at Awakaponga, because we're just changing over to a new monitoring system.
Right.
That that was the glitch for that one, and the serviceman went out with an electrician and sorted it out.
Yeah, and so where it says no protozol treatment, is that because there's a glitch in the chlorine dosing or some other?
No, so the protozoa treatment is through UV.
Oh, it's UV as well. Okay.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of places that we don't have UV, like Murupara and Johnson Road, but this next month Johnson Road's getting installed. Mm-hmm. We've bought the UV unit for Murupara, but it's sort of in the mix with everything else at Murupara, so it's just on hold at the moment. But
just for curiosity, how much does a UV unit cost?
We bought 5 units, and I think we got one for free because we bought 5. Yeah, I think they were about 400.
Not an arm and a leg.
450 grand, I think it was, and
the whole package.
Yes, and that came from Canada, so we had a bit of transport.
All right, thank you.
All right, do I have any other questions, Councillor Tunchos?
Thanks for the report. I was going to ask a question about the waste management. It says that we're at risk of being above our target because the national average has come down, and that's due to changes in reporting and more granularity in waste data. So there's not actually a behaviour shift nationally, it's simply the way the reporting is happening. And could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Through the Chair, good morning everyone. That's the case, yes. So basically, Ministry for Environment brought in new reporting regulations last year, which require more facilities to report and different types of facilities. Previous to that, it was just the Class 1 big landfills, but now it's all landfills, but also resource recovery centres, transfer stations all now have to report. So basically, they now have more data flowing in, so they've got more of an idea what's going on. So this target we set as part of our waste management minimisation plan in 2021, and at that time the national average was 740 kilograms per person per annum. But with all that data coming in, the granularity of the data, that's now fallen to 608. So at the moment, after the first 2 quarters, we could slightly exceed, if we carry on, we could slightly exceed that target. Another factor we've recently become aware of from a piece of work we're doing at the moment is that we actually have at least 3 waste operators who are bringing in waste to our facilities from outside our district. So we're actually receiving waste from Kawarau and from Apodiki, and that will contribute to this measure as well, because we can't, at the moment, we can't measure what amount is coming into districts. That's also affecting the measure as well. Yes, yep.
So to be clear, so the new data essentially it's because it's including other kinds of facilities that recover more, that's essentially driving the national average down.
That's correct, yes.
But it doesn't have the same impact on our districts, like, because presumably we'll have reporting within our district which wasn't being requested before?
Yeah, it wasn't being requested from central government before, but we already had that data.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we've got a good data system, so we know what we're recovering each waste stream, etc.
Yeah.
But central government weren't previously aware of that for the whole country.
All right. Thank you.
Mayor Luca.
Just back on the table on Appendix 2, page 66, where it says that, this is for you, Jim, FACE is low FACE, which is the free chlorine, and the contact time being low. Is that good? Well, we're dosing there, right? We've got a dosing pump. So what's the story with that? Is the pump not working properly, or?
Sorry about this. I've just been getting notes from our water treatment staff and over these things. So, yeah, that again was the SCADA issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a question of that feedback not coming back properly rather than no chlorine being added. Got it? Thank you.
Sorry, there was one more there. That was Murupara. That, again, we've got low level dosing of chlorine there. And the other thing is too, we've got that UV unit to put in, but it's not in because we haven't got the room to put in the existing station, and we've got a plan to build it's in the budget to build a new plant.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that dosing system is working properly. And it is. It's not because it's not working properly, it's because the measurement, the feedback is not right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Angiaho, did you want to say something?
I'll ask anyway. Okay. In terms of, and that'll be page 66 as well. Are the stakeholders' concerns and feedback incorporated into this non-financial performance planning? That's kind of my question. I suppose the relationship and engagement with our iwi relationships inside of that as we're working along, that's all incorporated into the feedback, isn't it? I've stumped everyone with my question. I do that, I'm so sorry. But I suppose in terms of feedback, not only on the equipment or that are being used or the treatment plant, but it's also continuing feedback from the stakeholders, which is Te Runana or Ngāti Manua and our communities around this.
Yeah, so in terms of
Thanks, David.
Murupara
You untangled
water,
my question.
Yeah, no, certainly the conversations with the Runanga and other community stakeholders there are ongoing. We're about to get back into those conversations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely a vital part of any solution there.
That's why I asked. Thank you.
Right, I'm not seeing any other questions, sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dennis. Didn't see your hand earlier.
Thank you. I was just looking through here, I can't quite find where it talks about requests for services. I can see it in relation to dogs and footpaths and things like that. I want to ask a question about the after hours request for service. I know recently during the Debris flood in Maratā, there was a phone call went into our request for service after hours number, and the response was less than desirable. Can I please have someone speak to me on how well that side of it's working, especially the after hours one?
Through Chair.
Would you like to, Emily?
Yeah,
Yes?
we can certainly do that. It doesn't form in any of these metrics, but we can certainly provide you some information about how that call centre works after hours.
I did actually ask 2 weeks ago, but no one's got back to me. So I think it's quite an important thing that an emergency like that if someone, member of the public or member of the emergency services rings up our after hours number, I'd just like to see what the figures are for customer satisfaction with that side of our request for service, please. Thank you.
Councillor Puller.
Thank you. Further to that subject, our family had occasion to use the after-hours service, and it was most satisfactory on that occasion, so worked for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say, I am following up the specific query that Councillor Dennis raised with me about the response on that night.
Oh, thanks for letting us know. Councillor Dodgos.
Thank you. I'm going to ask about one of the green tagged items, which is around the number of flooding events in the district with an annual target of less than 3. And I was thinking, flooding events, that's out of our hands, isn't it? But of course it's not, because it's about how we manage downpours and things like that. And I was just thinking about there was a bit of uproar on social media around, I think it was Bracken Street, where we've put in where the road kind of fills with water and then it flows out underneath into the kind of wetland area, and which seemed to, despite some of the complaints, seemed to work really, really well. And so I was just interested in, because I like this approach of sponge towns and all that kind of thing, do we see opportunity for more of that kind of development to take place? Like, are we expanding that kind of approach to flood control?
I think the answer is yes, where there's obviously space and capacity to do that. I think in terms of Upper Linear Park, our first sort of go at it, and yes, there's been a bit of feedback. There's some further maintenance work about to be done in that area to hopefully tidy that up. So I think we've seen the initial planting, yet we had a hiccup in the first flood, unrelated to the sponge park itself, but to another issue. But hopefully, yeah, we'll rectify the appearance, the queries around mosquitoes and the like, and rubbish, and hopefully it functions well as a stormwater option. Yeah.
Right, I'm not seeing any more hands up. So the recommendation is to receive the report on page 57. Do I have a move for that? Councillor Rangioho, seconded Councillor Isles. Any debate? No, I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, staff. We move on to our residents' survey report on page 68. And Georgia again, still this year, right? Right, would you like to run us through your report, please?
Thank you. I will take us through the report. So the purpose of this report is to receive the 6-monthly update of the resident satisfaction survey. The full survey is attached as an appendix to this report, and it provides results for this quarter as well as the year-to-date measure, which is a moving average. over the 4 most recent quarters. And the reason that this is used is to allow for the tracking of results with a lower margin of error, a more accurate margin of error. It should be noted that the survey is conducted on a quarterly basis with a sample size of 150 people, and it was most recently completed in December. Within the survey, there are 16 LTP measures, and so at this stage, 2 are above the target, 2 are on par, 7 are below the target but within the margin of error, and 5 are below the target outside the margin of error. So we've included in the cover report those with the largest changes, which are outside the margin of error. And you'll also note that in the cover report, management comments have been included where there has been significant change, and this is in response to the request in August 2024 from the Finance and Performance Committee that staff provide an update report. So we'll pass back to yourself, the Chair, and open for discussion.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the report and the appendix survey? Mayor Luca.
Sample size of 150, not really huge, is it? How much do we pay for this report? From SIL? 30,000? Oh, well, can I request that they do a few more surveys? I mean, yeah, it's...
Sorry, Lana would like to respond.
From my recollection, when Virgil Troy was here at the annual report at the end of the financial year, we talked about exactly this and the validity of the statistics. And I think the additional cost at the time was actually tabled in discussion with him, and council or committee, I think committee agreed that it wouldn't be worth the additional cost to increase the sample size. We looked at going from 150 to 250 per quarter, which would give us 1,000 responses across the year, and it was considerably more expensive.
Oh, I don't remember that, that bit. All right. But still, you have to ask the question whether, if you're paying 30,000 for something that's not really very robust, then you just sort of could be wasting money anyway. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Sometimes the comments can be, valuable feedback. So, Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to the public hall survey, you look at the response in quarter 1 was 78%. Quarter 2, it's dropped to 51%. And when the survey was done around, December, you say? So would that possibly be the impact of the outcome from the LTP, for example? Yeah. So it is very, very subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, always subject to timing. Right, do we have any other? Councillor Tantros.
Thank you. There's a comment around the dissatisfaction with business promotion and kind of suggests that it may be just there's a general kind of downturn and retailers are struggling, as we know. Is there any indication of, there's a perception that more could be done during challenging times. Is there any indication of what that might look like?
Thank you. I can talk to that, I think. So, yes, there is a general, we obviously have a connection into the businesses locally and also the Chamber of Commerce and also the team that were at Toy EDA and the board of Toy EDA. So there are various kind of links into the business community that we have here at Council, and all of the indications are the flat economy and the general economic picture does seem to be affecting local trade. But what I would say is we are trying to work really closely with the Chamber on their new strategy to make sure that we're supporting them in their initiatives for their members. And we've also been working quite hard to bring businesses together here at Council through supporting the BA5 network, the recent Signair launch and so on, to try and bolster some activity and to understand where their needs are. But it is an ongoing kind of issue that I think we're seeing nationally as well. And it's something we just need to keep a really close eye on.
In terms of those initiatives, I mean, I wouldn't like to spend a whole lot of money on it, but I think there's probably things we can do in the course of how we do things which can be helpful. In terms of those kind of initiatives, how do they get reported to us?
Usually through the Komara Vine communication channel. So often we talk about when they're coming up, but also after they've taken place. Usually there's some kind of description on attendance and what the kind of themes that were coming through in those conversations. Trying to think if there are other formats that you would receive that. Probably not at that level of specifics, but we could look at that as well.
Cool, thank you. And it was curious that there's dissatisfaction with dog control when we've just, but I'm guessing that a lot of that is around specific incidents, or also people post stuff about dog control up on social media, and that kind of creates I imagine a bit of a feeling, even if objectively we're performing better.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about this as staff to find out, what is happening, and that's exactly where we got to as well. Was I think it's either people who have, our officers have dealt with in the sense of infringement fines and the like, or issues, or social media I think is playing a big part in influencing how people feel about our animal control team.
And it takes a long time. I mean, something happened, someone had a problem 3 years ago, and it feels to them like it was yesterday. So it takes a while for these changes to flow through.
Just on that, sorry, Councillor, just on those, well, you've mentioned the noise control. Deputy Mayor Mick just made a comment that just wondering if that noise control on some of the complaints are more motorbikes rather than late night parties. I don't know if you'd know that off the top of your head.
I don't know. I know the issue around the motorbikes though, so yeah, it could well be a factor. We can look at the data if we need to, but yeah.
So it was just more of a comment, I think, than anything. Councillor Rangiaho, then Councillor Isles. Yep.
I'm probably just referring to the transfer stations over at the refuse transfer station facilities. I know it's a bit of a new with the fees and charges over in Murupara. Is this it's a low performance, but are we still to see more of a result of the performance of what's happening across the board? It's still early days for, yeah. How is that?
I can have a go at trying to answer that. I'm assuming you'll be trying to wrap it up, understanding the impact of the trial for fees and charges.
Yes.
And what. So yeah, I think what we need to do is have a bit of a workshop, understand what are the things we want to measure, fly tipping, the level of waste, weights, all of that sort of stuff, and also, talk about what is the information you need to see at the end of the trial or towards the end of the trial so that you can make a decision. So we'll do a workshop on that, and that should give you a bit of clarity.
Thank you.
Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chair. With regards fly tipping, what is our policy with regards actual fines or prosecution in the event of fly tipping and evidence being gathered that could lead to a prosecution? Do we do it, or is it easy just to go and pick up the rubbish?
Our staff go in and they can look through the material to see if they can find names and addresses, and we can then tackle people if we think there are leads there. Generally, a prosecution probably is disproportionate to the impact of the rubbish, because that is an expensive and a lengthy way to go. But we do have the option of infringement fines under the Litter Act as an alternative deterrent. Normally, the staff, if they can find the person responsible, they will go and ask them firstly to go and clean it up themselves and obviously meet the costs of doing so. If that doesn't happen, another option is that we get a contractor in to pick it up and we charge the person if we know, or infringements. Prosecution would probably be the last approach.
Have we had any recent prosecutions outside of the actual golf course?
Not for quite some time, no. We do them reluctantly. They are very expensive and there is a burden of proof, and generally before a judge in a district court, matters such as that are not usually looked on that favourably. And so we tend to not go down that path if we don't have to.
So there's really the incentive, we go out all guns blazing and say, we want to get on top of fly tipping and what have you, but in actual fact, we don't have a lot of weight, or we don't carry a lot of weight with regards a deterrent in the form of prosecutions, do we? Because as you outlined, the cost and the process, and I guess the rating of fly tipping as opposed to other issues that have to be dealt with through the courts would take a very low priority, is that?
Well, I think it's a proportionate approach to it. So it depends what the severity really is of the intent. We have had, a bag of rubbish thrown out at the window and we've got somebody to go and pick it up and remove it. It's sort of probably proportionate to what the issue was. We have other sites where we know are regularly spots where fly tipping occurs, and there is a bit of a trick to it because we can continue to clean them up, but that is it tends to be an ongoing cost for the council. We don't tend to find the people, and in some ways you can try and stop fly tipping in that spot, but we know it will then appear somewhere else. And so in some cases it's actually easier to know where it's been dropped regularly, to be able to go and pick it up regularly as a way of controlling it. It's not an ideal solution at all, but that is the reality of it. Yeah.
And I guess also just going forward from Napera's question there with regards to Murupara, and that was one of the concerns raised by those communities out there, that there would be an increase in fly tipping with the charges now being imposed on the Murupara transfer station. So that's another reason why I've raised the point, just to see again when we're doing that review that is part of what we research, especially in those more isolated areas. Madam, if I may, just one supplementary, just going back to the noise control, would that also include the noise apparatuses that are being used in kiwi fruit orchards, which was a biggie? Does that come into that category of noise control?
Yes, it could be actually. Yes, that could have been a factor. I think we had 16 complaints or some number like that we were investigating during that budding season. Yep.
Thank you.
Mayor Luca?
Just continuing on from what Councillor Isles was saying about the potential to prosecute people in the unlikely event you would ever be able to identify them, but what is our policy around naming and shaming people? So, so-and-so was identified as fly tipping and put it on our website or something, because it's really pretty poor practice.
We currently don't have a policy on...
You can't have one.
Well, we haven't got one.
Oh, but are there legal reasons you could or couldn't have one?
Well, there'll be privacy legislation.
There'll be some Privacy Act matters we'd have to look at it in that sense.
Pretty sure. Right, sorry, Councillor O'Brien.
Just a question on our public toilets. We're consistently scoring low over the years. And I guess we've done some remediation work to some of our toilets, but I've been through our toilets. They're not up to standard. And often I think that public toilets are a reflection on our space and place. Whakatane is a beautiful place to come to, but their toilets are substandard. We're consistently low. Have we got a strategy? What's our problem with our public toilets? Are we not maintaining them well? Are contractors not cleaning them enough? Or do we need to look at different style of toilet or something? But we seem to be consistently low. It's happening over the years. What's our strategy?
Who would like to respond?
So our GM Community Experience isn't here at the moment to take the question, but I do know that some work is being done on not necessarily a strategy, but a plan for our public facilities. So I can make a note and ask her to bring that back to you either through the Kumara Vine or through the next reporting cycle, if that would help.
Councillor Dennis?
Could you also, not just about the future plans, but about the current servicing? I know the toilets in Matatā are probably the most used in the district because we get more traffic coming into Whakatane that way than any other way. But I've been down there at 2 in the morning and seen people using the loos. But the servicing has a lot to be desired. And the other days, and the locking system that is substandard, so the other days, there's a gentleman had to ring around people he knew in Whakatane to get people in Matatā to go and let him out of the toilets because he couldn't work the locks that had failed. So can we just, as well as your report on the ongoing thing, as to the maintenance and the servicing of them, please?
Right, I'm not seeing any other hands up for questions, so we'll go to the recommendation on page 68 that the report be received. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Poller, seconded Councillor O'Brien. Any debate? No, I'll put, sorry, Councillor Poller, yes.
I'll just make a comment. Look, we're on a hiding to nothing with this stuff because people treat them badly and just pigs in a lot of ways. Not everybody, but you'd almost have to have someone there every hour, every day in some cases, which is disappointing really because our facilities are quite nice. So it's a challenge, but I guess we just got to keep going with it, don't we? Thank you.
Right. Any actual debate?
Not sure what toilets you're going to, John.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? Carried. Thank you. We've only got one report left. Shall we plough on or would you rather have a morning tea break now? I'm happy to. Right, we'll break for, I think 10 minutes will be fine. Come back at 10:37. Oh goodness. 10:40.
10:40, thank you.
I don't know that I need to say that, do I? Are we live? Okay. We will make a start, everybody. We've got our very last report. Welcome to our GM. It's on page 84. It's a financial reporting as at 30 September 2024. Bevan, would you like to run us through the report? Just you, is it?
Yep, just me. Kia ora. Sorry, just a small correction. 31st of December, not 30 September.
It is too, yes.
So that's quarter two report. Just acknowledge the timing. It's the end of February, and the next meeting you'll get a quarter three report as well. I'll take the report as read and probably talk through a couple of the key points. So the surplus for the quarter two is sitting there or thereabouts from a revenue perspective in terms of budget. We have received additional interest revenue, and that was created from some pre-funding of debt that we needed to borrow to meet our Treasury compliance requirements. In the CapEx side of things, we've spent $20 million, which is $6 million less than the budget. Most of the projects, most of it's timing related, and when you think about how you prepare a long-term plan and a 3-year capital works program, there's not a lot of certainty until we go and approve those budgets for the LTP. So there's a bit of a flow-on effect of a late adoption, some big changes from Waka Kotahi around what they were going to fund, and then our team's ability to start framing up some of those projects. So you'll start to see a lot of that come back into line over the 3-year program. The accounting deficit is $4 million higher than budget. That is just a representation of the non-cash items in the P&L. So in there is depreciation, which is higher than budget, and also gain loss on financial derivatives. So they're non-cash items but sit in the P&L as well. Throughout the report, there's some good explanations at an activity level around where operating budgets differ, or where the variances are, and also at a project level for capital projects. So happy to answer any questions around those. In terms of our debtors and arrears, about 50% of our arrears relates to the airport and our Ministry of Transport funding for the JV. I'm working through with Audit New Zealand to try and finalise all of those annual reports. There's some discrepancies around how they understand the JV to operate versus how it actually does. So they want to see 50-50 equity accounts, whereas the Ministry of Transport doesn't have all the funds that we need to operate that airport. And so quite often where the council's putting in more revenue or more equity than the Ministry of Transport. So we just want to make sure that our accounts fairly reflect that. And then towards the end, we've talked a bit about rates collection over the last, over this quarter and how it compares to the last couple of years. And there doesn't seem to be too much of variance, and it seems to be in line with the previous years. But yep, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'd just like to say, just to remind the committee that we just can't get that funding from the ministry until we get our accounts audited. So that's why it's there, just if anyone doesn't remember. And I just wanted to say that I really think it flows very nicely now, the report. I think it makes a lot more sense. So yeah, congrats on that. And then we've got a question from Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. In regard to the 3.1, the second bullet point, deficit of net capital expenditure of 20.7 million, the way I read that is we haven't spent $20.7 million that we're planning on spending. And yet what you just said made me wonder if that's actually what it means, as you're saying we haven't spent 6.4 million that we had planned on. Could you explain that a bit more for me, please?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a hangover from the previous reporting. The chart or table on page 85 or table 4.1 seems to be a bit of a combination of the funding impact statement with some P&L kind of stuff sitting at the bottom that comes up that you get an accounting surplus. So the 20.7 million is the yellow line on that table. So your capital, it says surplus deficit of net capital expenditure, that's the 20.7, compared to a 27 million for the budget, which creates your 6.3 variance. If you're looking purely at capital expenditure by itself, there's a $9 million variance between actual year to date and revised budget. So the revised budget will include carry forwards, and then David and I have just had a query about whether it includes the Waka Kotahi budgets that were cut as well. So that's something we're going to go back and have a look at.
So you're saying so far this year we've spent $20.7 million on net capital expenditure?
The net deficit, so from a funding perspective, is 20 million. We've spent 26, but we've got close to $5.3 million of revenue from subsidies and development contributions that offset it, that give you the 20 million.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have any other quick count, Mayor Luca?
Bevan, at the time of the small table on page 90 regarding invoicing for rates, we said that for the first quarter of 2025 it was 91.6%, which looks like a drop, but that's due to the reporting.
Late adoption of the LTP. And
yeah, has that number, I guess, likely to change? No. I mean, we're down also in quarter two, but I don't know if that's significant.
No, it's not. When you compare it to the previous year for quarter two as well, it seems like about a 0.4%.
Or 1%.
It'll be interesting to see what at the end of next month shows in terms of whether we.
Yeah, I've had a few phone calls from people who said they're not going to pay their rates, so we'll see if that number changes in quarter three.
Yeah, we're doing. Alongside that, we're doing some extra work particularly this year, around trying to encourage people to apply for rates rebates. So there's a bit of a blurb in there around the work that we're doing and what we're proposing to carry on doing for the remainder of the year to try and get as many people that are eligible for rates rebates, get it to them.
Yeah, it always amazes me that people don't seem to be aware that they qualify and don't actually capitalise on it. I mean, is it because they don't need it, or they don't know?
Probably more like they don't know.
All right, thank you.
Do I have any other questions on the report? Councillor Tunchos.
Thank you. I was looking at page 87.
Oh, do your mic, sorry, Nandor.
Apologies for that. Page 87, payments to staff, it talks about the higher leave balances reflecting the December variance anticipated to reduce with staff taking leave over Christmas and summer school holidays. Do we have a significant liability when it comes to staff leave? Because I remember at one stage there was a bit of a backlog and it was creating a bit of a risk for us. How are we positioned now?
We do have some problem areas, and I don't know if Emlyn could speak to it better, but we are talking to our managers and asking them to manage staff that have high leave balances.
Okay.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I know it's considerably lower than it was. I think a lot of organisations, particularly through COVID, we had lots of staff that didn't take any leave for 2.5 years. But yeah, there's a couple of areas that we're looking at, but it's a lot better than it was.
Okay, cool. We'll just keep working away at it. Yeah, thank you. I made a note somewhere it talks about development contributions, I think, were down. And I'm just trying to find the place where I saw that. Is there any explanation for that?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen a reduction in resource consent applications for things like new subdivisions, and in the building consent area, we've also seen a decline, or at least a change in the nature of the consent. So we did see a number of new houses and the like that would generate DCs. Now there tend to be the garage out the back and the minor amendment. So that's generally the reason.
So less actual kind of new dwellings.
Yep.
Right.
DCs are all based on additional households.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if we're not getting those, we're not getting the DCs.
So if it's like a granny flat or something, how does that?
Granny flats are covered in the policy. They play a proportional part of the DC size of the building itself.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And following on from that, we've consciously looked at that and made sure that the annual plan for next year, the budget, accounts for reduced revenue that we may expect as a result of this downturn.
The other question I had was, and it is answered in the report, was around the non-rates debt, around the transfer station and around building consents. But I see that it sounds like there's one big firm or whatever that's in arrears, so that's our debt team's on top of that.
For the transfer station?
I was looking at both the transfer station and the building consents, although I think the report refers to the resource consents because they're not going down, but there was a bit of a backlog in building consents as well. But yeah, so it's the transfer station first of all.
Yeah, so we are actively managing the arrears with the transfer station and some of the ones where we do have some significant balances. We call them in for a meeting, have a bit of a chat and talk about repayment plans, and then we've also got options around Bay Corp for collection.
Yeah, because I suppose the ones that I kind of noticed, you've got the current and then overdue 30 days. Well, that's just a bit of a slippage, I guess. But when they're getting past 60 and 90 days, then you start to go, what's their intention here? Right, thank you. That's helpful.
I've just got a comment. Was just a comment from the Deputy Mayor that she was pleased to see that despite the rates increases, we're tracking reasonably close to receiving the same percentage as last year and last few years, and that Q2 stage that they've had a 3% increase for rates rebates. So happy to see that. Just a comment to pass. Any final questions? No, we've got the recommendation that we receive the report on page 84. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Dunchos, seconder, Councillor O'Brien. Any debate? Stuart, have you got a question?
Oh, hi folks. Yes, just a very quick one on the. I'll just go to the page. It was on page 85, and it's just the financing costs, which are just a bit over $1 million over budget. They're pretty well signposted. What's the main cause of that variance?
That's pre-funding. So
I beg your pardon?
It was additional debt, pre-funded debt, which I think was taken out in October last year.
Yes.
To meet the LGFA compliance requirements and the PwC ones around term. So that's why we've got higher interest costs, but also higher interest revenue because it's gone on to term deposit. So I think one of the
okay. So right. So that's not so financing costs. There's not a net figure. It's a gross figure, and I'd have to look back to see the under other operating income, the return you're getting from those term deposits that you've done in relation to that pre-funding.
Correct, yeah. And I acknowledge it's quite confusing.
Look, thank you. That's explained it really nicely for me.
What I was suggesting we would do, and I think was have PwC come and speak at the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting to the Treasury report, and we can ask them questions about, pre-funding and the limits and what are the impacts of some of those.
That's a really great idea. Fantastic. No, thanks very much for that. That answered me my question. I'll leave you to it.
Thank you.
And just in case anyone was wondering, we were actually in debate, but I missed with the timing and the time delay with the screen. I missed Stuart's hand for the question time, so that's why I allowed a question while we were in debate. So, just in case you're wondering. So we're still in debate. Anything anyone would like to debate on that? No, we've had a mover and a second. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So that concludes today's meeting. Thanks everyone for their attendance and the audience at the back. And I'd like to ask Councillor O'Brien if he wouldn't mind closing our meeting with a karakia, please. Really. Thank you all. Thanks everyone. And lunch is next door.